Hello, Blue Review has returned, and I am back in front of the video camera after almost a month. This is the longest siesta I've taken between videos since I began making them regularly and building up the channel in September of 2020. So, a lot of reasons for that, but I'm probably going to get into those in one of the next videos I do. With this one, I just want to hit the ground running and get back into the Blue Review show and get back into reviewing the blues. Now, lately, the only blues I've been reviewing are my own blues and the misery of life itself. No, I'm just kidding. But actually, I haven't been reviewing blues on here except for a couple of episodes on some science fiction films in my library. I've generally been uh, taking in a lot of films I've never seen before from all different genres and eras on streaming. Basically, a lot of things that I have been wanting to see, curious about, and they're popping up everywhere. And now's the time. Ironically, though, the only one I'm actually paying for, Amazon Prime, is not really one of them that much. I haven't really, I don't think I've really watched a movie on Amazon Prime all the way through in a couple of months at least, because they have severely diminished their selection of films on Prime. Not selection of films, they've got a lot of great films on there, a lot of obscure stuff, a lot of interesting stuff, but they're charging $1.99 to $3.99 and up for each one. So I don't want to go back to the Blockbuster era, the Blockbuster Video. Around here, we used to call it Cockbuster Video, and I have some fond memories of those days. But I don't miss the Cockbuster model, the censorship and the high fees and et cetera, et cetera. So Netflix killed them off, and Netflix has its pluses, but again, Netflix kind of abandoned most of its great back catalog. They might have dumped their black catalog too, for all I know. I don't think I've seen a blaxploitation film on Netflix in at least 10 years. But here's the rostrum of venues that I've been watching. So I have a Plex account started for my dear friend Dwayne Cochran, ladies and gentlemen, and I have YouTube. Well, we know all about YouTube, and we have the free Tubi. And Tubi not only has a lot of titles I've wanted to see and obscure titles, but it has the most really extreme and underground titles that I've ever seen on one mainstream channel. And it's great. And I've reviewed a few of them here. I'm going to keep reviewing more as the future unfolds. So anyway, thanks to dear friends, I also have access to some other channels, HBO Max, thanks to the wonderful Kimberly Jones, and I watched my Marvel stuff on there. I watched, obviously, the last 3 TV series on there and reviewed all of them. And adjunct to that, to the HBO Max, is the Criterion portal, so I have access to the Criterion channel. So I have bookmarked a ton of art house and films that I've been wanting to see in the Criterion collection for ages, some of which I've been wanting to see for decades. Now is the time. So I'm making my way slowly through that. And then thanks to Tim Tolbert, ladies and gentlemen, Tim Tolbert. So Tim Tolbert has allowed me access into his, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm all mixed up here. Let me rewind. Kimberly Jones logged me into HBO Max. HBO Max is where I'm watching Titans and soon Doom Patrol. That's where I'm watching the DC stuff. And there's a few movies I've watched on there as well. And that has the portal to the Criterion channel. So that's all Kimberly. So then Tim has gained me ingress into the world of Disney Plus, where I watch Loki, etc. And its adjunct site Hulu I now have access to, and I've watched a couple movies on there, and Also, I've watched the Hellstrom TV series. Well, I haven't watched the whole thing. You know, it was a 10-episode series, and then it was pulled, yanked. End of Marvel Television. Um, I'm on episode 6. I'm going to do a whole show on Hellstrom at some point, and on Titans and all that other stuff. But the TV stuff's going to wait a while. I want to get back into BLU review, and I've got a backlog of titles from these various venues that I've been mentioning. Obviously, I've seen a good bit in the last month, but to be honest, with so much going on in my life, and my attention span's kind of been waning at times with my health, so I've had a hard time completing films, so I've juggled films. Luckily, I have a good memory, and I can kind of pick up where I left off like a book. A lot of people can't do that, and that's cool if you can't. I just have the weird talent. As long as it hasn't been too many, I can usually keep it in my head about a week or two, sometimes longer. Some of the films I watched a few weeks ago that I want to review, I probably will have to refresh myself with kind of a cursory rewatch before I review them here. Okay, so that's all future stuff. Today I'm going to talk about some actual Blu-rays that are new acquisitions and are joining my Blu-ray library, and they were a donation to the channel by the aforementioned Tim Tolbert. We won't clap again, but we're clapping silently. He is a permanent channel patron and a dear friend. So Tim took pity on my situation, and of course my watch lists and carts of Blu-rays is just chock full, but they're going to stay there and probably rot until I claw my way out of poverty. So he gave me a little leg up, and I dearly appreciate it. So the two at the very top of my list were two films that I dearly love, that I've loved for many years, and that I have a storied history with one of them. And I want to talk about them today. And, right as Amazon is finally dropping their Blu-ray prices again after inexplicably raising them during COVID when they started to get really low finally. They're plummeting, but now I can't afford them. And a lot of the projects that have been in the works of cult films to come onto Blu-ray are just surging out onto us in 2021. Criterion, on Severin, Amanda Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome. It's insane. I need thousands to get these, but I won't. A lot of them are ones I used to have on DVD or VHS or both. A lot of them I've never owned, but I've seen and loved. And then there's a handful I'm kind of curious about, like really curious about, but those will be the ones, the blind buys I'm going to do last. Trying to avoid blind buys. That's why I'm doing all this streaming for free. I used to blind buy like crazy back in the 2000s and DVDs. So which to discuss first? Okay. Yeah. All right. So there is a director. I'm going to turn the lighting on this up a little bit. I'm using natural lighting, but it's kind of waning wonky here. So there's a director called Yasuzo Masumura. I'm not going to give you his bio because I haven't memorized it. But I will say he was very prolific. Japanese director, primarily worked from the 50s through the 90s, I believe, in the studio system. The hardcore work he did in the studio system was kind of during what I consider like a golden age of Japanese cinema, the 1960s, and the end of the 50s to the early to mid 70s. That's kind of where I see it as like an oasis of greatness. And these movies were being churned out by these studios, genre films for entertainment, and yes, my God, there were a ton of them, and they were so well crafted. And this is not an indictment of the American or British genre films of that era. Now, we know the European ones of that era were quite fine, especially Italian and French, but and German. to be fair. But the Asians have this, I don't know what it is. This is a generalization. You're going to probably call me a racist or something. But um, basically, there's a work ethic, I think. There's a craftsmanship in the way they approach maybe all arts. I'm not sure, but definitely film. I don't know. I would call it the Kurosawa syndrome. I'm just going to name it real quick here. That's off the top of my head. So with this deal, it's like you could take the 70s grindhouse and drive-in and underground genre films, your action, horror, exploitation, science fiction, etc., and erotica, and these kind of things. There were hundreds of raw, powerful classics churned out of the system. And there were tons of dross, and dreck, but there was a lot of diamonds shining through. I mean, there was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That alone is one of the best crafted films I think ever shot, especially in the horror terror field, and it's relentless. I've talked about it on this channel. I think I've reviewed it on this channel. I hold it in high esteem. But there's been a ton. Even back to the early 60s, there was the black and white films like Night Tide and Carnival of Souls and such, that kind of Horror Hotel, that kind of culminated in really in Night of the Living Dead was really the apex of that. But what I'm saying is that these were fine films, but they were fewer in number, and in some of these films, not so much Night of the Living Dead, and especially not so much Texas Chainsaw per se, but in a lot of cases we had to forgive their shortcomings, and overlook them and enjoy them, meet them on their own terms, and enjoy them for what they were. Herschel Gordon Lewis especially comes to mind. In Asia, there was some trash, no doubt, and especially in the Pinky Roman era, as they call it. The Pinku Iga films, kind of violent, erotic films. I mean, the Japanese have a lot of deviance in their cinema, and they always have, kind of on the down low, and then as the years have gone by, yes, I mean, there's a wave of cyberpunk films that Shinya Tsukamoto kicked off with stuff, with his stuff, and then stuff like, was it Norifumi Suzuki, I think, who did Rubber's Lover and Pinocchio 964, and then stuff like Evil Dead Trap. I mean, they're all over the map with the extreme violence and the extreme kinkiness. The Guinea Pig series. I'm going to turn the lighting up. It looks cool, but I don't know how conducive it is to this. So I guess I look grainy, kind of like the American films I was talking about. It wasn't on purpose. I'm trying to get a little more light on the subject. So I'm going to move slightly, and if it persists, I may pause and do some tinkering. But anyway, can you see me now? I hope you can hear me now. I'm having a lot of sound issues recording videos. I did a video about the movies I'm going to discuss today, and I had to chuck the whole thing. So I did some tests, and I'm praying that they work. So that's why I'm talking really loud. Well, to me, really loud. So, Asian craftsmanship in genre films churned out by studios. There's nothing like it, man. And then you can say the same about the Italian period with the giallos, the Polizio Tescis, and the spaghetti westerns. There were some trashy things in there, but but the Japanese films, they almost all look great. I mean, that's what's so amazing. And mostly the actors are great. I mean, they're not like, I don't know, and the behind the camera, the mise-en-scène, the lighting, the photography, the editing, the production design. It's amazing. So a guy who I believe was at the absolute top of the heap, so to speak. He was like the apogee, the apex of this kind of filmmaker. And I would list other filmmakers along these lines. People like, of course, Seijun Suzuki, 5,000 that I'm forgetting, but Teruo Oishi, people that did idiosyncratic or taboo kind of films, or just strange films, or just films that had that quirky kind of independent spirit to them. Suzuki had a lot of troubles with the studios because of his willfulness. There's one director, and you know, that I think kind of epitomizes all of this. I think he kind of crosses the bridge, maybe between Yasuzo and Suzuki's and Taro Ishii's and Hasiba's and into the Oshimas and such of the Japanese New Wave. And I don't know. I could be giving him too much credit. But his name's Yasuzo Masumura, as I mentioned, and Fantoma put out DVDs of his work in the 2000s. I had all but one, which was called Manji, which I did later see. And I'm selling all of them now. But yeah, I think 6 of them altogether. And one of them, well, they've just put out 3 of them on Blu-ray. Not Fantoma. Fantoma's, I guess, collapsed. But the Great Arrow Video has put out, they're beginning the Masumura collection. They're doing one called Irizumi, which I can't remember if I've seen or not. It's slightly later than the other movies I'm discussing, I think. I'm kind of blanking on it, but it is one of his major films, considered to be. So anyway, they're putting out Black Teskar with an extra film called The Black Report on it, which I have not seen. Black Teskar is superb. They're putting out probably his masterpiece, Giants and Toys. Totally visionary cinema from the late 1950s in Technicolor. But from 1969 in color, this is probably his most famous / infamous film. It is a horror film. It is kind of a psychological horror film. And it is kind of an erotic film, kind of a deviant erotic film from the works of Edogawa Rampo, the Japanese Edgar Allan Poe, so to speak, who, you know, his works have been adapted in zillions of films and of various media. His influence is omnipresent. So anyway, this one is called MOJU. That's the Japanese title. And we're going to turn the lighting up so we can see this a little better. Okay, so this is called Blind Beast. And this is one I read about in 1993 or 1994, in a Video Searcher Miami catalog. Okay, so the Video Search catalog, you know, it was that piqued my interest, and then I also around that time acquired the Phil Hardy Overlook Encyclopedia of Horror, which is an essential volume. It's also been known as the Allroom Encyclopedia of Horror in previous editions. It had a lot of great writers. A lot of them I'm not familiar with. Some wasn't. Some I am now. Some I still am not. But Phil Hardy was one of them. He was the editor. But of course, Kim Newman was probably the leading light, and that's where I first became exposed to his film writing, long before I became exposed to his fiction writing or any of his other stuff. So, whoever wrote up Blind Beast in that book, it made an indelible impression on me. So, let's talk about this. Well, inside, this is a card ad for Daimei Jin Trilogy, which Air is also putting out. And there's a little booklet here. This incredible painted artwork. Same guy who did the cover painting. Yes, I forgot his name. But supposedly there's a reversible cover. Oh, there is, yes. It's a real famous poster of this film. I'm going to go ahead and take it out. What the hell? So, whoop. So yeah, that's the first MOJU poster I ever saw, and probably the one you encounter most in image searches online. So anyway, 1969, this film, all right, let's just boil it down real quick here. There's a model named Aki, and she is played by Mako Midori, and she is has posed for this supposed genius artist guy, and done a great deal of work for him, photographs. She's in chains, she's naked, she's various poses. Great lighting, mostly all black and, well, probably all black and white. But she also posed for a sculptor for him. That's the centerpiece of this collection. So this collection is being shown in this gallery, and she comes in to look for him, the artist, and he's not there. And she happens to notice a patron who is crouched before the statue of her, and just really like feeling it up, to be blunt. Um, Later on, she goes home. She works with him some more. We don't. That's off camera. The artist, and then she orders a masseur, and it's a blind masseur. His name is not Ichi or anything, Ichi, and but he starts to get a little fresh with her. She's not into it. Well, it turns out this is the same guy who was fondling her statue, her effigy. Um, he soon knocks her out with chloroform and takes her to his house. He lives with his mother. He's like a 30-some-year-old virgin, and he's been blind almost since birth, or maybe since birth, and he's obsessed with touch. He thinks touch should be enshrined as a way to perceive art, just like ears have music and eyes have art, visual art, and film, touch. So his sculptures are capturing that. And his studio is insanely surreal. There's a male and a female figure, kind of at opposite ends of each other, like they're going to have 69, but they're both laying flat. You don't really see the heads, I don't think. And they're huge. You can walk all over them, a normal person. And then on all through the walls and the ceiling and everything, he's created these multiple images of female body parts. So he's got eyes, ears, breasts, arms, legs. I think he has vaginas tonight, but something else. Not buttocks. Seems like he had some other eyes, ear, noses. I think there's a nose collection, and maybe and lips, of course. So it is freaky and surreal. They're all different sizes. This is a movie you really need to see. It's really it's getting dark. Okay, I'm going to pause this and illuminate this a slight bit and continue. I have returned, bathed in a golden light. You can see my beautiful face and lovely beard much more clearly now. It's getting to like Odin levels here. I love it. And now we have to wear masks again, so it looks kind of funny sticking out of the bottom of the mask. But anyway, so Blind Beast. Blind Beast, yes. So this sculptor, Michio, he has kidnapped Aki. He lives with his mother, and his mother has helped him. I guess I think they mentioned that they had an inheritance from their father when he died. And so they created the studio with all these body parts and these two statues as the centerpiece. So he wants her to be his model, and they go back and forth, and of course she wants nothing to do with it. She doesn't trust him. She thinks he's a perv, and she's just kind of like, fuck this. She's just very blunt, very a simple lady who just kind of respects the artist she's been working with, but thinks this guy's off his rocker. And maybe he is, but he is a pretty incredible sculptor. And he starts kind of bartering with her. If you pose for me, and do X amount of works, then I'll let you free. That's not a really good condition. Obviously, she's not going to get paid for this. And so it's a power struggle back and forth. And the mother gets sick of it and tries to sneak her out when Michio's gone. Michio, I'm butchering his name. When this is discovered, you had seen that if you had any doubt that she really wanted to get away from Michio and was just lying to him, you see when the mother tries to smuggle her out that, yeah, she definitely wants to leave at all costs. But as soon as the son comes back and they start arguing and he wants to keep her around, then she begins pitting the son against the mother and acting like she really loves this guy. And of course, he's falling for it. He's never been with a woman. But yeah, and unfortunately, in the melee, his mother's accidentally killed, and it's intense. This guy, she was his whole world, and vice versa. So then her fate's kind of sealed, and resignedly she goes along with this bizarre situation. And what begins happening over the next several weeks is it's like a sensory deprivation thing, or maybe a sensory overstimulation thing. They begin making love constantly. I guess you would say he rapes her, though she doesn't really fight him, but obviously she doesn't want to be with him. And so now he's not a virgin anymore, obviously. And where he keeps working on his work based on her. It's dark in there. He keeps it dark because he's blind and poorly lit. Her eyesight starts to fade. She begins to immerse herself in that world and away from the outside world. Her mind begins to change and transform, and she begins to show sides of herself she'd never shown. Like a lot of her observations about the world and senses and art and things become very deep and very philosophical, a side which she had never exhibited before. And she starts to be fond of him, and she starts to crave the sensations now that she's going blind. And as it goes on, the things that are going to sexually excite her the most and mentally stimulate her the most, since they've explored pain in all of its forms, pleasure, they've explored pleasure in all of its forms. Now it's time for pain. So it gets sadomasochistic and it gets pretty intense, and I won't say really gory, but bloody, very wince-inducing. And finally, she wants him to basically turn her into a kind of a limbless statue. Of course, that will kill her. So she begs him to cut off her limbs, all four of them. A film that took this premise much later that I did not care for, Boxing Helena. It's probably familiar to a lot of people watching this video. Even if you like Boxing Helena, this is the real deal, man. Seriously. So she does it, it's excruciating. He does it, and it's excruciating. But it's not 100% graphic. But what's implied and the force and the cuts, it's like that scene I told you about in Dogtooth, where the girl hits herself in the tooth and knocks it out. It's just the sudden jerk of it, bam, and it's like, wow, and it's like, you wince. So, that's the skill of less is more in certain scenarios. But there is more in this too. She's almost completely naked. You don't see her pubic area, and there is quite a bit of blood and bruising and cuts. So, and just general weirdness. And they die cradled in the dark together. He's cradling her, I don't know what you'd call it, torso, and kind of commits harakiri, sort of. Falls on his knife that he did this to her with. So there's all the spoilers, but I always have spoilers. So anyway, this film is one of the more intense horror films that I've seen ever, in the sense of it's very involving aesthetically. It's beautiful to look at, and the story is very suspenseful and very thought-provoking too, and this whole sense and art thing. And I'm an artist, and I like hearing this kind of thing in a film, this kind of insight, albeit from a twisted point of view. And the music is that's the best thing about the movie, really. The music is beautiful, this beautiful elegiac melody that crops, that lighting's better, towards the beginning and recurs all through the film, and really kind of gives it the extra kind of push over the edge into just an indelible experience. So the Blu-ray is beautiful. Arrow did a great job. There's a segment on Masumura called The Supersensualist or something like that. And there's the introduction to the movie by Tony Raines, trailer, image galleries, etc. A little bit immersive. You know, it's not up to some of their loaded presentations, but man, just having this film in 2021, this 1969 Japanese film that was just almost a rumor and a legend in the 80s and 90s when I was coming up and first getting into film heavily. That's great. I'm so happy. So let me go on to the second film. This is a film that by Jorge Grau. Now, I reviewed his Living Dead at Manchester morgue for Halloween last year. Fantastic movie. Blue Underground did a pristine presentation of that on Blu-ray. But his other stuff is just kind of, you know, sitting around. Code Red did his great film Cannibal Man, original title Week of the Killer, which is a translation of the original Spanish title. And oh no, that's De La Iglesia. I'm sorry. I'm only jumping from one guy to the other. There's Grau and there's De La Iglesia. We're going to talk about De La Iglesia another time because finally, he's one of my favorites. Finally, his stuff is going on Blu-ray too. Okay, the reason I conflate them is not just because they're 70s Spanish genre films, but because I reviewed two of each of their films. They're more obscure films in 1998 for Steve Bukowski's great zine / magazine, Shock Cinema. So he had a column called Film Flotsam, and readers were welcome to do their own reviews, and I did quite a number of them. And I'm going to post them online. I've been saying that for years. I'm going to post them online. I'm probably not going to post the ones in the first issue I did because I think my writing was hideous. But the next 3 or 4 issues I did, I think I did 4 or 5 issues, I was very happy with, especially toward the end. And toward the end is when I indeed, with the help of Video Search in Miami and Tom Weiser, I got VHS copies to review bootlegs of 2 Eloy de Iglesia films and the guy we're talking about, 2 films by Jorge Grau. I had rented Legend of Blood Castle, so I'd seen that on VHS, that version of that. That has recently come out on Blu-ray through Mondo Macabro. Ceremonia Sangrante, the real original title. It's under Blood Ceremony, but that's what it translates as. That's a great Countess Bathory themed film. So he's got those 2 horror films that are known to many people. But then he's got these 2 films. One is Pena de Muerte. I reviewed that for Shock Cinema, also known as Penalty of Death, but it was retitled in the U.S. Violent Bloodbath, go figure, with Fernando Rey and the late, great Marissa Mill. I hope that will come out on Blu-ray. I had those VHS tapes that I reviewed, and then I had a DVD upgrade that I got from a place called ioffer.com around 2013, 2014, when I first inherited some money. And in the same fell swoop, I got the sister title upgraded too. And the other one I reviewed for Shock Cinema on VHS. That was COTO de CAZA, or Code of Hunting, from 1982. And this is the one that's on Blu-ray now via Mondo Macabro. I'm going to turn the light up a little bit. And this one is now more commonly known as Hunting Ground. And this is a treasure, man. This is one of those films that's so obscure and so notorious by such a talented filmmaker, and talented and known for these kind of fascinating horror-tinged films. This one is like a horror film, as a lot of like revenge, rape revenge, home invasion kind of films are. They kind of straddle the horror, drama, action genres. This one is truly horrific, but not through the whole film. It's different than his other films that I've seen, the other 3. It's very, I'm going to say it's more mature. It's more of a conventional drama, but that actually makes it more intense when it just lets loose. I mean, it definitely has some exploitation elements to it, no doubt. You know, there is nudity and violence and some grueling sexual violence. Um, one scene of which is kind of why it's notorious. Um, but it's also, like Pina de Muerte, a meditation on the justice system. I guess at the time he made these under Generalissimo Francisco Franco, who's still dead, and yeah, he made it pretty oppressive for these cats. So you know, Jess Franco and went to other countries, I think, for this reason. And Grau, Grau was really using genre films to speak out against this stuff. So was Eloy de la Iglesia. There's political and socio-political and social issues, just all under those films, kind of, and a lot of times they pop up to the surface. Living Dead in Manchester more least of all, but even that has this early 70s, at that time, fashionable ecology angle and a hippie protagonist. So, Grau had his finger on the pulse, and I don't even know if he realized it. He has more of his finger on our pulse today than he did probably on his countrymen's in the 70s, even. Hunting Ground is just blatant with its concerns. So basically, you have a lawyer played by Assumpta Serna, who was, I think, 25 when she made this film. She went on to become very famous for Pedro Almodovar films, and then now she does a lot of bit parts and supporting roles in bigger films. She's a lawyer. She's a very young lawyer, and she is a defense attorney, a criminal attorney for defense. And she's very liberal. And when I say liberal, I mean the old school. I don't mean the current. We won't get into all that, but if you've seen some of my videos, you know how I feel about liberals today. I feel liberals are just conservatives. They're just afraid to use the term because they got such a bad rap and deserved it. But back then liberals were people like the Ed Asner who just died. I mean, Hollywood was filled with true liberals who were like almost like civil libertarians and totally for equality and socioeconomic and racial equality. Liberals today sometimes pay lip service to those things, but generally their voting records and the money spent goes against those things. But it was a little different back then. But she's a liberal in the kind of almost stereotypical sense, what they called a bleeding heart liberal back then. She's strongly against the death penalty. And she's kind of, I don't want to say she's a Pollyanna, but she kind of is. I say this because I used to be that kind of liberal during that same period. I was the early 80s. I was a lot younger than her. But, early to mid 80s, I was the same way. And I'm not like that anymore. Ideally, the death penalty shouldn't exist, but I can't say I'm 100% against it anymore. In theory, yes, but humanity can be vile, and it's more than an eye for an eye. She says at one point in the movie, she tells her son that if we murder the criminals, we become criminals, and you've seen that echoed in stories all throughout the decades, and you've seen it debated in the media. Of course, the great show Daredevil that I love so much, episode 2, season 2, Daredevil and Punisher have that classic rooftop confrontation, and they kind of are having the whole debate right there. And he's a lawyer. Daredevil's a lawyer too, ironically. So she kind of knows her clients are scum, but she, blames it on, and probably rightfully so, societal conditions and poverty. She thinks they're a symptom of a disease. So in other words, her ideas are ones that are compassionate and they're reasonable. And if she would go to the root of these things, which I think today's left-wingers definitely want to do, is get to the roots of the systemic corruption and impoverished nature of our country and inequality on all levels that has given rise to crime and misery all around, and soon massive homelessness to go along with that. But she's not really, she talks about the roots of the problem, but she's really just more treating the symptoms. And the symptoms can't always be treated with the the deep thinking of the root. The symptoms can't always be treated with the compassion you would like them to. Like if someone has a gun in your face, you can't always just go, well, you were abused as a kid, and um, I know you don't really mean this, so you can, I guess go ahead and rape and shoot me. That's where I've kind of changed over the years. I don't feel that's a wise stance. I don't think it's rational. It goes against our basic self-preservation instincts. Survival. That's what we're programmed and coded in our DNA. Everything we do is survival and propagation of our species. True, all animals, all life forms. I mean, we engage in other pursuits. Many are lofty, like the arts, but then a lot of them are just killing other people. Uh, different ways to kill people. So she's in a quandary here because these thugs kill her husband, and she doesn't really, in my opinion, handle it well. And her mother-in-law, the mother of her deceased husband, hates her. Her kids start to lose all respect for her, mainly her older kid, who's her son. The daughter's kind of still a little clueless, deer in the headlights age. And the dad did hunt, which the mom I think was not cool with, and he did teach the boy how to use guns, kind of on the down low because mom wouldn't approve. So she is like a frustrating character. There's frustrating scenes, not just because she is like incredibly stereotypical, archetypal bleeding heart liberal, so to speak, but also because the people who come to her and exploit her positions on this are just scum. One is one of the criminal's mothers. And this woman, she doesn't give a damn that the son blew Assumpta Serna's husband away. Adele is the character Assumpta plays. She doesn't care about Adele's husband. She's just like, keep my son out of jail. You'll ruin his life. He's young. It's kind of like those rapists, who get away with rape, these white preppy guys. There's one in particular, you would know his name if I said it, case from a few years ago, and they let him off. And one of the arguments was he's in college. He has got his whole life. You can't throw it away. Well, when he raped the girl, he kind of threw her life away like, just trash. And this is the thing. This mother doesn't get, okay, we get why your sons are trash and his friends, but that doesn't change him being trash. That doesn't, like I said, it doesn't treat the symptoms of the disease. It just finds the root cause. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't, not only does it not cure the disease, but it doesn't even put a Band-Aid on it. It's just like, oh, well, let them be, let them, and the problem is that Adele is like torn. She's mad. She doesn't think the son should be let out of jail, but the mother like browbeats her in this just grueling scene, just embarrassing to watch. Both these characters, because obviously they're both archetypes of these 2 points of view, and one point of view is exploiting the other. The mother is exploiting Adele's liberalism and compassion and for just unlimited supply of forgiveness, which, like I said, I had that when I was younger. That gets beat out of you in life, either figuratively or literally too. And that's kind of what this movie's third act is sadly Adele has to have it kind of beaten out of her. And the kid dies in prison, the criminal, and he has some kind of seizure and chokes. And the mom, of course, blames her. She's the bad guy, Adele, even though her husband was murdered. And the system's like going, hey, yeah, to the mother, like feeling sorry for the mother instead of Adele. But a lot of it's because Adele will not grow a spine. And she captures this really well. I mean, to the point where you just want to grab her and shake her and say, I don't mean literally, and just be like, Adele, wake up, girl. And her son gets it, and he starts hiding one of his dad's pistols and loading it. in case something happens. And the mother is just like the grandmother of the son, the mother-in-law of Adele. She just pretty much thinks her daughter-in-law. She tells her, "You're just a spineless coward. You're worthless. Just like get out of my sight." And she doesn't really say that, but it's like, but yeah, and I don't blame her. So the gang, spurred by this guy's death, descend on the house. And man, okay, so it's just hell. It's all hell breaks loose, utter chaos. The mother talks shit to them and gets slapped around. The grandmother, rather, and then she tries to call the cops, and they beat her to death. One of the guys. The leader of these guys is this repugnant-looking redheaded clown. He's the main instigator, but the others are kind of helping him out, holding people down, holding them back, keeping the daughter and the son. They knock the son around a lot because he tries to help his mom. And finally, his son kind of hangs back. And obviously, maybe it's crossing his mind that he should get that gun. Well, concurrent with this, they step up the assault. They escalate to just insane, surreal proportions. Vulgar and brutal. The redheaded cat decides he's going to rape Adele, and he does. But apparently he's kind of impotent, and of course he blames her naturally. And he's saying she's cold and frigid. Let's warm her up. And so yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, don't just cut this off. And if you're incredibly sensitive to such things as sexual violence, maybe turn this off too. I had enough people jump at me about liking a Serbian film. So, they've got a fire going, and they've thrown some of the kids' toys in it. By the way, it's like Christmas on top of everything else. And the guy grabs a branch they were using to stoke the fire, and they've got her completely spread eagle after raping her, and they kind of, I don't even know if I should say it. This is like Antichrist level of mutilation, anxiety riddling me here. Yeah. So they basically set alight her pubic hair, and it looks like the end of the flaming stick is right probably where her clitoris would be, or was maybe now. It's painful to think about. You think we guys only get wince when we think about having, penises whacked off and stuff. I wince with any genitalia being given that kind of punishment, or any kind of punishment, unless it's the kind people are like consensually. But mutilation, no, it's not my thing. And it looks real. And I've watched the film a few times, and I can kind of see how the effect was done now. Having learned more about effects since the days when I first saw this movie. But it looks pretty flawless, unless you really look and think, and some of these ways they do these setups. But damn, it spares nothing. And like the Antichrist scene where Charlotte Gainsbourg snips off her clitoris with scissors. It's you don't quite see this woman's clitoris, but you can kind of almost feel it melting. I hate to be so grotesque about this, but it is what it is. So now people can hate me for liking this movie, I guess. This movie has no element, though, anyone could say is glamorizing sexual violence, believe me. But you know what? The kid has the gun, and he actually kills two of the guys. And our man, who turns out to be, well, I was going to call him a pussy, but that, I guess, would be ironic, with his supposed obsession with mutilating female genitalia and forcibly taking it. But he is kind of a pussy. He flees. He's scared of the kid. the kid gives the mother the gun, and then Adele runs out. So she's totally naked, but she's got like a trench coat, you know, and you know it's really open. So she's like pretty much frontally nude through the whole thing. Like I said, you know, it is realistic and brutal. So in that case, I think it's very effective. But you know, some people are probably watching it for the exploitation. They want to see more of Apsuta Serna's body, which you've seen all of it throughout the movie in different. I mean, there's a scene of her and her husband making love, and it's very gentle and loving. It's not graphic, but I mean, she's naked because when people are getting ready to make love, often they're completely naked. Go figure. So she shoots the guy, but then he kind of hobbles around and is escaping her. And, you know, he's like a typical crud. He's not going to go easily. But when he's, you know, routed, he's a coward. And then he's going to try to trick the person who's going to get him. And, of course, all that happens. That's predictable. And the sad thing is he pulls the pity card, kind of. I don't know how much of it's deliberate, but he's kind of like looking at her with these pleading eyes as she's got the gun right in his face. And then, of course, he grabs the gun. So he was fucking with her. And the thing is, you see the expression on her face, and it does ever so slightly soften for a couple of seconds. And I'm like, girl, man, they killed your husband. They killed your mother-in-law. They mutilated your genitalia. This guy particularly, and raped you. And you're like going, well, maybe. You know, I'm like, come on, haven't you learned anything? So hopefully after the movie, the kid gives the mother a stern talking to. Anyway, by the way, the one reason the kid likes guns, especially handguns, is well, he uses a rifle, but there's a handgun that his dad had too. It's because he's a fan of the Lee Falk pulp era comic strip hero, The Phantom, which you might remember had a film where Billy Zane played him several years back, and he had those kind of guns, you know, the 9mm. So anyway, yeah, and I mentioned that in my review in Shock Cinema too. But yeah, when the guy grabs the gun, it blows his head off, and blood goes all over her. She's already a little bloody. But the thing is, you don't see his head blow apart, and I was pretty disappointed. I mean, I know this sounds ghoulish and bloodthirsty, but it's kind of like the end of Martyrs. It's like, you know, the woman who's done all these horrific acts to these people, she finds out that the afterlife is not what she was hoping it would be, now that she's tortured someone to the point of being able to glimpse the afterlife. And then she blows her head off, just like that, though. And I'm thinking, I wanted to see her tortured for a while. I wanted some karma, man. And that's kind of how I felt about this. I was like, yeah, he's dead. But I liked it when he was shot in the back and just crawling around bleeding better and suffering. But, oh well. But I think my attitude about this kind of underscores the whole debate of this movie. A liberal like Adele would be repulsed by what I'm saying. And maybe some people watching this are repulsed by what I'm saying. But I think a lot of you guys can sympathize and understand, especially if you've been the victim of violent crime. You know, the kinds in this movie. A loved one killed by criminals, punks, sleazebags, you know, you've been raped, you know, just any of this stuff, child endangerment. We won't even get into the fire thing. So it's incredible. It really, it's long and drawn out, but it keeps you interested. It keeps the atmosphere going, and it really has that coiled intensity to where that scene happens, and you're like, is this really? Yes, this is really fucking happening. So anyway, this doesn't have a lot of extras on the Blu-ray, unfortunately. It has an interview with Growl, which was recorded a few years ago before he passed away. And a ton of Mondo Macabro trailers, like 15 or 20 minutes of those. Now, this is a 4K transfer from the film's original negative, so that must have been quite a task to dig that up and to scan it like that and make it look this good, because it never came out on digitally, you know, officially. It never officially came out on DVD worldwide that I'm aware of. Maybe in Spain, I don't know. But it never came out official on VHS in America. I do think, I mean, there were other countries that had it, You know, and I've seen Greek tapes, and you know, some of them say hunting ground, some of them say code of hunting, some are code de CAZA. I just can't recall if I've seen any actual American box art like you would see in a mom and pop store in the 80s or 90s when I started frequenting it constantly. I never saw it here for rent anywhere. But we're in Charlotte, and back then it was really, you had to pretty much hit every video store between here and Kannapolis. You guys probably don't know where Kannapolis is. You probably don't want to know. Though I will say George Clinton of P-Funk, Parliament, Funkadelic, he was born in Kannapolis. A lot of great people were born in North Carolina. John Coltrane, Pam Grier, me. Just kidding. So, yeah, Hunting Ground. So these two are some taboo subject films. You've gotten used to me reviewing that kind of stuff, and these are two of the texts for that kind of thing. Two of the earlier ones, two of the more powerful ones, two of the more enduring and classic disturbing films. So now everything's getting gold and pixelating, and I'm starting to look at 1905 film, and that's cool. Sorry about the visual inconsistency. And I hope the sound works on this and I can actually post this, because it'll suck if it doesn't. But so some parts of this may be garbled. I've tried not to talk super fast like I do sometimes and mumble. So let me know what you think of this and of the movies. Please subscribe. Please give me a thumbs up. Share this. I think a lot of cult movie fans are jumping on these purchases. They've probably been waiting just as long as I have for this to happen, these definitive versions. And with that, I bid you adieu and take care of yourselves.